Hi, Scott Tipton. Wanted to be able to give you an update from Washington this week. We've had a very busy week in Washington in terms of Natural Resources, Small Business Committee, the committee that I chair in small business as well. In the Natural Resources Committee, we had the opportunity to visit with our new Secretary of Interior, Secretary Jewell. Was very gratified during our question and answer period in visiting with the Secretary when it comes to Blueways. I think as Coloradoans, we all certainly understand the importance of being able to protect our rights for our state, our private property rights, our priority-based system, and our state rights when it comes to water law. We were able to get from Secretary Jewell the comment that she was suspending the Blueways program that had been initiated under Secretary Salazar for further review. The good news out of the exchange that we'd had with the Secretary was that she would make the commitment to us to be able to stand with us to protect our private property rights, our state rights, and our priority-based system in the state of Colorado. We also got on the topic of sage grouse, the greater sage grouse and the Gunnison sage grouse as well. Had the opportunity to be able to invite her to the 3rd Congressional District of Colorado, where we have great conservation efforts that are currently going on at the local level to be able to recover the species, but most importantly to make sure that we aren't hurting jobs and we aren't hurting local families that are trying to be able to work and build and produce crops in our agricultural area. The Secretary had indicated to us that they would certainly look at the schedule and hope to be able to come out to the 3rd Congressional District to be able to visit on the ground on this very sensitive and important issue for the state of Colorado and most certainly for the 3rd Congressional District of Colorado. We also, in the Small Business Committee, had an opportunity to be able to visit with the Acting Commissioner for the Internal Revenue Service, Mr. Werfel. Mr. Werfel and I had an opportunity to be able to have an exchange about the complex tax code and how it's impacting small businesses and real Americans. During the course of that visit, Mr. Werfel had pointed out that he effectively uses TurboTax. He doesn't file with the long form in regards to the IRS, but he does recognize the importance of a complex tax code. When asked how many pages, he didn't have the answer, but we provided over 70,000 pages out of the IRS. This is a complex tax code that has to be made flatter, fairer, and simpler for the American people to be able to understand. And none of us got a warm and fuzzy feeling, as he expressed in his testimony, an IRS that was willing, in the service of the American people, to work with them in regards to the tax code. It is broken and it certainly needs to be able to be addressed. I was able to communicate what I have heard out of our district and from many of you, a general frustration with how the IRS works. We've seen in Washington right now, as the IRS is trying to explain how they have targeted groups for their conservative values and we're eliminating their ability to be able to move forward with nonprofits to simply be able to express their views. We made the comment that the IRS was apologizing and that it wouldn't happen again. I questioned him as to whether or not that was going to be suitable for the American people as well. If we simply said, we're sorry and it won't happen again. No, that's not the way the policy works in Washington. They fine and punish if an honest error is made. That again calls for a flatter, fairer, and simpler tax code that we've got to be able to address. Further, when we're talking about the IRS tax code, we've got to be very frustrated when, as American citizens, we're trying to be able to comply, to abide by the law, to be able to pay our fair share, if you will, into the federal treasury to be able to fund essential government programs. We've seen that we have a broken system in Washington. The problem is if we call up the IRS to make sure that we're complying literally with the tax code and they give us an answer, they will not indemnify that answer as being correct. In my conversation with Mr. Werfel, I said, will you guarantee us if we call somebody in the IRS that the answer that they give us is correct? His answer simply was, that's not the way the process works. Again, as I expressed to Mr. Werfel, that's exactly why it's broken. When the IRS themselves cannot understand or comprehend the very tax code that they are trying to implement and enforce upon the American people, that calls for change, something that we're certainly going to be supportive of out of our office. In visiting with our small business subcommittee that we chair that oversees energy, ag, and trade, I had an opportunity to talk about the President's Climate Action Plan, CAP for short. That is going to be imposing effectively cap and trade, which is voted down in previous Congresses, having devastating impacts on small businesses and our community's ability to be able to grow, particularly on small businesses that are working on razor-thin margins right now. We heard great testimony from real businesses, real working people, that are just trying to be able to struggle, survive, and to be able to preserve employment in our country right now. Unfortunately, we'd extended an invitation to the EPA that they declined. This again shows a pattern that seems to be coming out of Washington, D.C. An arrogant bureaucracy that is not willing to listen to the American people, not respond to elected members of Congress when they are called to committee hearings to be able to express the President's position in regards to policies that he is trying to implement by executive fiat rather than going through the legislative process. We're going to continue to work hard to stand up and express our voice out of the 3rd Congressional District in Washington to make sure that the President and this administration do not continue to overreach, that we are making sure that we're having a government that is there for the people rather than a system where the people are supposed to be there for the government. They've got it backwards. We've got to make a system that actually works for the American people, and we're dedicated to pursuing that policy. Over the course of the next few weeks, we're going to be introducing some additional legislation as well. To give you a quick update, our Healthy Forest Management and Wildfire Act of 2013 is proceeding. We will have the full markup next week in the Natural Resources Committee and then move it to the House floor. We hope that you'll encourage our senators to reach out and make sure that they're supporting this important legislation as we see wildfires impact many regions in Colorado, and in particular the 3rd Congressional District of Colorado. As always, we look forward to be able to hear your comments. We're continuing to go through our district to be able to hear your voices and to be able to express to the best of our ability your voice in Washington, D.C. Thank you.